bear in mind, the thing that would hit us would be an unknown at this point. And we're getting a lot of those. We're getting a lot of unknown values, but they're very dispersed. They're not concentrated. So we don't really see it as being an individual item per se. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're talking about the possibility of pandemic between January and March 2008.
Correct.
Some kind of fungus infection in the fall.
Which will go all the way through and build through December. Bear in mind, we see these not as particularly discrete events, but as they work their way through the global consciousness.
All right. Incredible flooding. How about the economy? What do we see there?
Nothing really good. I mean, I hate to put it that way, but it's really clear that the dollar is under very great strain, and that the back end of things, all the derivative mess, is a giant wall collapsing on us with the plasterers plastering it as it falls.
No collapse, though.
Yeah, collapse.
Oh, really?
Yeah, loss of the dollar. There's no question about that.
When? Timetable?
I'm sorry?
Timetable?
It's underway at the moment.
Ongoing, so it could hit us any time, really.
It is hitting us now. If you haven't been to the grocery store, then perhaps you haven't noticed that we have massive inflation going on, at least 13 to...
Well, yeah, and the gas pump is high and everything else.
And, of course, the government wishes you to exclude all the things that actually matter from your calculations.
Yeah, in other words, the so-called core rate of inflation, which is X food, X energy, like you can get along without either.
All right, you kind of hinted about terrorism. Obviously, it's on everybody's minds right now.
Yes, and that's kind of a problem for us. It's kind of like religion. It's an emotionally hot subject. So when people discuss it, they rarely do so in a calm and orderly fashion from which we can determine when something different occurs. Make sense?
What if you're able to pick up, I don't know how you would break this down, but the minds and the consciousness of the terrorist?
We actually do examine things from the perspective of the entities. So when we were actively looking for terrorism stuff immediately after September 11th, that's how we were approaching it. And we were somewhat successful in picking out the details of the DC snipers.
Are you doing that now?
No.
You are not. Why not?
It's much too risky for us.
What do you mean by risky?
As George alluded to, the military and the organizational mind is linear in nature. This leads to two distinct situations. One is that the people that are linear thinkers believe they can get away with things, okay? They can be clever and escape the consequences of their actions. This also allows them to think that others might also think that way. And then the other aspect of this is that the linear mind is not able to conceive of the idea of cycles as active from the point of origination of the original intent or action. And this is a long way of saying that they don't really understand what we're doing. And as George alluded to, they would assume that we were lying to them and were in fact tied in with things as our accuracy level went up. There's one saying we have here that Igor, George, and myself live by, and there's only one sin in future telling, and that is accuracy.
That is fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Okay, the websites I promised you. Stay with us, by the way, because at the top of the hour, we'll make the switch, and we're going to take your phone calls next hour with George Ure and Clif. But Clif's website is halfpasthuman.com. George's website is urbansurvival.com. And when we come back, I shall ask them the question before your calls if they see anything around 2012. Lots of chatter on the internet about that, and let's see if they're able to pick that up and what it might mean. I mean, could it be that solar celestial event that I think could occur? Or what does the conscious mind think could happen? So stick with us. We'll take your phone calls next. Get ready to go. I'm George Norrie, and this is Coast to Coast AM. Okay, gentlemen, I'm sure you're aware of 2012, the Mayan calendar end date. Do you pick up anything at all going on about this?
Of course, there's a great deal of discussion, and the date itself has obtained its own level of archetypical symbology, so it's very easy to track now. There's a very high emotional quotient, all of it anxiety and fear-based. Those descriptors that come out are, to be very blunt about it, grim.
Grim?
Yes. The indication, now bearing in mind we always err on the side of the extreme.
True.
Okay, but the indications are that the 2012 date will only be a problem for a very
Now, when you say grim, though, and then a very few, to me it's kind of conflicting.
Very clear that the process of our entering into alignment with the galactic center and the galactic rift, which began in 1998 and is about halfway through now, will culminate in a continuation of the degradation of the biosphere that we've all enjoyed for a long time, and will place extinction problems on a great number of species, including our own, over the course of these next 5 years.
Interesting.
George, there's a tendency of people to take what's going on in today's news events and project it forward in a linear fashion. And so when you read reports like the world runs out of fish to make fish and chips out of in, say, 2040, there's an implication made for the linear mind that there will be people here interested in eating fish and chips. And I'm not sure that's a good bet.
Well, you might be right about that. But in terms of 2012, anything could happen then.
Well, no, we're actually getting some indicators that oddly enough fall into line with the electrical view of things, or the electrical view of the universe, the plasma charged view of the universe. And basically what it's saying is that the descriptor sets we're getting are pointing to a giant field effect, if you will, a spinning magnetic body such as the Earth inside of another spinning magnetic complex system such as our solar system, in alignment with a very giant field of energies beyond which we are able to sense and deal. Is going to cause a great deal of problems, and in fact already has, on our local environment. These are going to continue unabated and in fact accelerate to the point where stress will be placed on the species as a whole.
It's fascinating that you're picking this up, too. It really is. I mean, I've always believed that people are starting to talk about this date, and it's obvious something is going on.
We started actually picking it up in 1997. It was what convinced me to abandon the original intent of the program. The original intent of all of this was to make money on the stock market based on the emotional quantifiers around stock exchange kind of stuff. And once I started picking up more references to the sun as in solar system going strange, as opposed to sun as in Stanford University networks, I soon became rather absorbed in the sun going strange and sort of thought, well, I don't really need to mess with the economic aspect.
Okay, let's go to the calls, and let's see what everyone has on their mind. Wildcard line, you're on the air with us. Hi there.
Hello, how are you?
I am fine, thank you. And where are you calling from?
Dallas.
All right, go ahead.
I would like a little bit more clarification on the September 19th prediction. I know that in September, the president is supposed to come back and ask for more money from Congress to continue the war, and they're supposed to decline it. Does that have anything to do with the September 19th?
It will factor in a minor sense in that we're not picking up, we've got plenty of stuff for our entities that relate to the officialdom and government and so on. But what we're seeing for September 19th at this point, in a large emotional fashion, is about 1/3 related to the planet, and that is to say the climate, etc., and about 1/3 related to economics. But that economics aspect is also related to the climate. So it may be that, the way we're interpreting it now is that 2/3 of this emotional change are related to a perception shift relative to the planet on which we live and the universe in which it runs around. So basically, imagine a situation where all of a sudden everybody gave up the idea of humans being involved in global warming, and that there was nothing we could possibly do to affect the situation. Therefore, hope goes out the window. Therefore, behavior changes, and we get a different set of emotions.
Alternatively, we could be looking at something like floods continue, the banding of weather continues, and all of a sudden in September it dawns on all of humanity that we're going to run out of food, something like that.
And so in that context, the political aspects are certainly at play, but they're relatively minor.
And so the bees maybe could do some big part of it.
All of that is certainly a component of it, but we're looking for something that would shift the emotional basis upon which the population acts on a pretty much daily kind of a thing. So we're looking for a big shift, and lots of people are aware of the bees, but it doesn't have a big emotional resonance.
Okay, Clif and George, your website, urbansurvival.com, what can people get when they go to that, first of all?
Well, if I can differentiate the two sites,
all right.
Clif's site is the long range, what we're expecting to happen, and my site, Urban Survival, is about the sort of the play-by-play as this stuff pops into mass media. The bees, for example, that was characterized about a year ago in Clif's work as the green death and the emergence of the green meme. And so we were able to watch the bee colony collapse disorder pop into mainstream media, and now it's kind of fading out. And yet here in Texas, among the farmers, there's considerable concern about the lack of bees.
Actually, though, it never popped into the mainstream media until a few months ago after we pounded away at it for a long time.
It was part of this overall cluster of words around two aspects. One was green, meaning in the sense of environment, and the other was death. So it was all kinds of various different things about environmental degradation, so to speak, not merely the bees. That was just merely one component of it.
Do you see any huge earthquakes in the United States at all?
Yeah, actually on the West Coast. We're getting some rather indications of some weird ones here, where we're going to get 3 large quakes. And of course, because we're U.S.-centric, we tend to think of them as being here. Now, bear in mind, we had the idea of 300,000 people being affected and a land being driven back to a previous age prior to the Banda Aceh thing, but we were actually centering that more in California, more at 30 latitude and more towards California, and in fact, of course, it was on the other side of the Pacific. So given the fact that we err frequently on geographic references because of the way that those come through, just like with numbers, we still show 3 earthquakes that will be peculiar in the sense that each one will be felt as though, oh, boy, we dodged the bullet on that one. There will be a little bit of a pause, and that might be days. I mean, we just can't tell time that well. And then there'll be another one, and then finally the third one. And that third one is being described as rather strange in our part 1 here because it'll have some interesting effects in terms of there will be some kind of a very public wedding that'll get interrupted. And
That's
we're having these kind of
public wedding.
Somebody of some prominence is going to be getting married on or about that date, and the earthquake series is going to interrupt and postpone.
All right, sounds like an LA wedding.
Something along those lines.
Yeah.
See, that's how we would want to interpret it because that's at the forefront of our mind. But usually that is wrong. Like I'm always telling Mr. Ure, nope, that's the first thing out of your mind, so forget it.
I'm going to start tracking the trades now. Who's going to get married out here in Los Angeles?
Yeah, but now also, again, we're seeing this after or around the period of the time of the equinox. So bear in mind that we work on a lunar calendar that focuses on these astronomical alignments. And so we have a tendency to place these Earth